During Thanksgiving, my daughter stood up and looked me straight in the eye. "We've decided to cut you out of this family." I laughed, calmly reached into my purse, and handed her an envelope. "Here's something for all of you." They ripped it open, then froze, because in that moment, they realized their comfortable little lives were over. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're tuning in from. My name is Lola Smith, though most people just call me Lola. At 65 years old, I never thought I'd be sitting in my small apartment telling strangers on the internet how my own children tried to erase me from their lives, only to discover I was the one holding the power all along.
Family is supposed to be forever. That's what I told myself through every hardship, every disappointment, and every lonely birthday. I raised 3 children, 2 daughters and a son, mostly on my own after my husband passed away when I was just 41. For decades, I cooked their meals, washed their clothes, helped them with school projects, and worked 2 jobs so they could have opportunities I never did. I thought that meant something. I thought it built loyalty, respect, maybe even love. But somewhere along the way, my children stopped seeing me as their mother and started treating me as an inconvenience. It began with little things: fewer phone calls, excuses about being busy, holidays spent elsewhere. Then it turned into outright neglect. I would invite them for dinner and no one would show up. My birthday would come and go without even a card. I told myself, they're just busy with their own families. But deep down, I knew. It wasn't busyness. It was indifference. Still, I swallowed my pride. I smiled through it. I kept giving, kept showing up, kept hoping one day they'd remember who I was to them. Then Thanksgiving came. That year, they actually invited me. I nearly cried from relief. Maybe, I thought, this was the turning point. Maybe my family was finally coming back together. I spent the night before baking my famous pecan pie, the one that used to make the kids fight over the last slice. I even ironed my best dress, soft navy with little pearl buttons. I wanted to look my best. When I arrived at my daughter Emily's house, everything looked perfect. The table was set with gold-rimmed china, a turkey bigger than my oven could hold, candles flickering in crystal holders. I felt a small spark of hope. But as soon as I walked in, I felt the chill. My children barely hugged me. My son's wife avoided eye contact. My grandchildren mumbled hello and ran off to their rooms. The warmth I had been craving wasn't there. It was as though I'd been invited out of obligation, not love. I tried to brush it off. I sat quietly, sipping the wine I brought, listening to their conversations about vacations, promotions, and private schools for their kids. Not once did anyone ask how I was doing. Dinner was halfway through when it happened. Emily stood up, her fork clinking against her glass. "Mom," she said, her voice sharp, "we've decided something as a family." I blinked, confused. We? Who's we? She glanced at her siblings, then back at me. "We've decided to cut you out of this family." The words sliced through me like a knife. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, the laughter, the "just kidding," but none came. My son, David, avoided my eyes, staring down at his plate. My youngest, Sarah,
fiddled with her napkin. None of them spoke up for me. Not one of them defended me. That's when I laughed. It wasn't the laugh of someone who found it funny. It was the laugh of someone who had seen this betrayal coming for years. Slowly, I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick envelope. "Well then," I said, sliding it across the table. "Here's something for all of you." They snatched it up greedily, expecting money, maybe a check, maybe the deed to my house. For years, they had whispered about my savings, about the inheritance they believed was theirs by birthright. But when they opened it, the blood drained from their faces. Their comfortable lives, the big houses, the private schools, the vacations, depended on me. And in that moment, they realized everything was about to change. Because I had been planning for this Thanksgiving for a very long time. The sound of paper tearing filled the room as my son David ripped the envelope open. His wife leaned closer, her eyes glinting with greed. Sarah and Emily craned their necks, eager to see what treasure I had laid before them. But as the words sank in, their smiles evaporated. David's hand trembled as he read aloud, "Effective immediately, I have transferred all financial assets, properties, and holdings into a private trust that none of my children have access to. This trust will bypass you entirely and be donated to charities of my choosing, with only a small portion reserved for my grandchildren's education." Silence fell over the table. You could have heard the turkey skin crackle. Emily's face turned crimson. "What is this, Mom? Some kind of joke?" I sipped my wine calmly, letting the bitterness roll across my tongue. "No joke, just the truth. You wanted to cut me out of your family, so I thought I'd return the favor. Consider yourselves cut out of mine." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Sarah's voice wavered. "But you can't just take everything away. That house, those savings, that's supposed to come to us." "Supposed to?" I raised an eyebrow. "Children are supposed to love and respect their mother. Did you forget that part?" For years, I had listened to their snide comments, endured their cold shoulders, and swallowed the ache of being forgotten. But they had mistaken my silence for weakness. What they didn't know was that I had been preparing for this moment. You see, about 2 years earlier, I had sat alone on another forgotten birthday, staring at my kitchen table with one slice of store-bought cake. No candles, no phone calls, no visitors. That was the day something inside me hardened. If my children could live without me, then I could live without them. From that day forward, I stopped dropping hints about my will. I stopped talking about when I'm gone. And I quietly found myself an attorney who specialized in asset protection. Every account I had, savings, retirement, even the modest rental properties I had collected over the years, was moved into a trust under my full control. The trust didn't recognize my children as heirs. Instead, it earmarked scholarships for underprivileged kids, medical funds for struggling seniors, and yes, a sizable college fund for each of my grandchildren. Because they were innocent in all this, I wouldn't punish them for their parents' cruelty. As Emily clutched the papers, her voice cracked with fury. "You've been planning this betrayal behind our backs." I leaned forward, meeting her eyes with all the steel I had left. "Betrayal? Tell me, Emily, what do you call standing up at Thanksgiving to announce that your own mother is no longer part of the family? You disowned me first. I just, finalized the paperwork." David slammed his hand on the table, rattling the silverware. "You can't do this. People will think you're crazy. Everyone expects parents to leave something for their kids." I let out a sharp laugh. And maybe that's the problem. You've been living your lives expecting my money to be your safety net. Did it ever occur to you that I might want to spend my last years in peace? That I might want to choose where my hard-earned money goes? Sarah finally spoke, her eyes brimming with tears. But Mom, we need that inheritance. The mortgage, the school fees, how are we supposed to manage? I looked at her sadly. You should have thought about that before treating me like a burden. My love isn't a transaction. Neither is my legacy. The room buzzed with tension. Their partners whispered furiously to them, calculating what this meant. Their children peeked out from the hallway, sensing something was terribly wrong. I sat back, oddly calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't the powerless, forgotten mother at the edge of the table. I was the one holding all the cards. Emily shoved the papers back at me. This isn't final. We'll fight it. You can't just erase your own children. I tucked the envelope neatly into my purse. Already notarized, already filed. Even if I died tomorrow, nothing changes. And before you think about sweet-talking me into undoing it, remember this night. Remember your words. I won't forget them. Their anger was volcanic, but beneath it, I could see something else. Fear. Because they realized in that moment that the comfortable life they had built, private schools, vacation homes, luxury cars, wasn't just theirs. It had been subsidized by me, the mother they now claimed to reject. And now, that foundation had been pulled out from under them. I stood, brushing imaginary crumbs from my dress. Well, thank you for dinner. The turkey was delicious. As I walked toward the door, no one moved to stop me. They were too stunned, too shaken, too busy trying to imagine a future without the inheritance they thought was guaranteed. That night, as I stepped into the crisp November air, I felt lighter than I had in years. My children thought they had disowned me, but really, I had freed myself from them. And soon, they would learn just how much they had lost. I thought walking out of that Thanksgiving dinner would leave me feeling hollow. After all, what mother doesn't dream of being surrounded by loving children and grandchildren during the holidays? But the truth? I felt powerful, lighter, freer than I'd ever been. I went home, brewed myself a cup of peppermint tea, and curled up with a good book. For the first time in years, I didn't cry myself to sleep on a holiday. I smiled. Of course, my children didn't take it so gracefully. The next morning, the calls started. First, it was David. "Mom, we need to talk," he stammered, his voice sticky sweet. "Last night got heated. You know Sarah didn't mean what she said. We're just stressed, that's all. Mortgage, kids. Life is hard. But you're still our mom. We love you." I almost laughed out loud. The same man who slammed his fist on the table was now tripping over himself to sound gentle. "David, you love me when my money is within reach. That's not love. That's convenience." Click. I hung up. By noon, Emily had her turn. She texted me a string of heart emojis, followed by, "Mommy, I don't want us to fight. Let's have lunch together and sort things out." I didn't even reply. Sarah was bolder. She showed up at my apartment the next day, clutching a bouquet of flowers like they could erase years of venom. "Mom," she began, her eyes glistening with crocodile tears, "I don't know what came over me. You mean the world to us. Please, let's fix this." I let her in, sat her down, and poured her tea. I listened as she spun a performance worthy of an Oscar, about love, forgiveness, family. When she was done, I leaned forward. "Sarah, Do you remember my 60th birthday when I sat alone at Olive Garden because none of you showed up? Or how about the year after that, when you all went on vacation together and forgot to call me once? You can't rewrite history with flowers. Her face fell. She realized her script wasn't working. Mom, she hissed, her mask slipping. Do you have any idea what you're doing? You're destroying us. We built our lives expecting your support. If you take it away, everything falls apart. Then maybe, I said softly, you should build stronger foundations. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard my neighbor peeked out to check on me. That was the moment I knew. They wouldn't stop here. And I was right. The following week, I received a letter from a lawyer, my own son's lawyer, claiming I was mentally unfit to manage my finances, that I had been manipulated, that the trust was invalid. Can you imagine your own children trying to declare you incompetent just to get their hands on your money? I took the letter to my attorney, who smirked as he read it. Let them try. We prepared for this exact tactic. You see, when I set up the trust, I underwent a full medical evaluation, physical and psychological. Every document was airtight, every signature witnessed, notarized, recorded. He said, they can scream and cry all they want, but they won't win. Unless they drag you into court and prove you're insane, which clearly you're not. For the first time in years, I laughed until my sides hurt. But my children didn't stop there. Oh no. They tried guilt. They sent the grandchildren to call me asking why Grandma didn't love them anymore. That nearly broke me, but I reminded myself this wasn't the kids' fault. This was manipulation through innocent voices. They tried intimidation, late-night knocks on my door. Anonymous letters slipped under the mat, warning me I'd regret this. And finally, they tried to charm me again. David invited me to a lavish dinner at his country club. Just us, Mom, he promised. Let's talk. But when I arrived, I saw Emily and Sarah waiting at the table too. Their faces plastered with fake smiles, their husbands sitting stiffly behind them. I sat down, folded my hands, and waited. Emily leaned forward first. Mom, we overreacted. You're right, we've been selfish. But think of the grandchildren. Don't you want them growing up with nothing? Don't insult me. Sarah jumped in. Mom, we'll change. We'll visit more. We'll celebrate your birthdays. We'll do whatever you want. Just If I thought the letters, the guilt trips, and the staged dinners were bad, I hadn't seen anything yet. Because my children weren't just desperate. They were cornered animals now. And cornered animals bite. It started small. One afternoon, I went to withdraw some cash from the bank, reported me as a potential victim of elder fraud. My children had tried to paint me as a senile old woman being tricked out of my money by some shadowy con artist. I laughed bitterly. The only fraud here, I told her, is the fact that my children think I'll fall for their tricks. Of course, my attorney had prepared me for this. Every account was documented, every transfer legal, every signature valid. The bank quickly cleared me. But that was just the beginning. The next week, I received an invitation from David. "Come over, Mom. The kids miss you. Let's have Sunday dinner together like old times." Something in me wanted to believe him. Maybe he really had softened. Maybe family wasn't completely dead. But my gut told me otherwise. So I went, but I didn't go unprepared. I slipped a small audio recorder into my purse before stepping inside his house. And wouldn't you know it, 10 minutes into dinner, Sarah and Emily appeared from the kitchen, their eyes glinting like wolves. "Mom," David said, sliding a thick stack of papers across the table, "we've thought this through. It's for your own good. This way, everything is simpler. No lawyers, no drama. Just sign this and we'll all be taken care of." I glanced at the top page. It was a legal transfer. If I signed, I'd be giving them full control of my assets. "Mom," Emily whispered, her hand brushing mine, "please, we can't survive without you." And that's when Sarah leaned in, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Sign it or you'll regret it." The room went silent. I looked at all three of them, my babies, my flesh and blood, faces twisted with greed, lips curling with entitlement. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply reached into my purse, pressed stop on the recorder, and said calmly, "Thank you for confirming everything I already knew." Their faces drained of color as I stood up. "If you ever contact me again, it will be through my attorney. Goodbye." I walked out without looking back. But of course, they didn't stop there. A few days later, I woke up to a voicemail from a social worker saying they'd received a report that I was living in unsafe conditions and needed to be placed under supervision. Another attempt to paint me as incapable. I laughed as I listened, then forwarded the message to my lawyer. He called me back within the hour. "They're building a case, Lola. They're going to try for a conservatorship. They want to make you legally powerless." The word sent a chill through me. Conservatorship. Like I was Britney Spears, trapped under my children's thumb. But I wasn't scared. I was furious. And fury has a way of sharpening the mind. So I prepared. I gathered every document, every recording, every piece of proof. I lined up character witnesses, neighbors, church friends, my doctor, even the bank manager who had seen through their earlier scheme. I wasn't just ready for their attack. I was ready to turn it into their downfall. The hearing was set for mid-December. Walking into that courtroom, I saw them all sitting together in their stiff suits, whispering to one another like co-conspirators. Their lawyers shuffled papers, nodding smugly. And then the judge entered. The case began with their attorney arguing passionately that I was clearly unfit to manage my own affairs. He painted a picture of a fragile, confused old woman manipulated by outsiders, unable to handle money, vulnerable to scams. My children nodded solemnly, their expressions dripping with fake concern. And then it was my turn. I stood, straight-backed and clear-eyed. "Your Honor," I said, "I am 65 years old, but I am not senile, I am not fragile, and I am certainly not incompetent. In fact, I anticipated this exact betrayal from my own children, and I came prepared. I handed over the audio recording from David's house. The courtroom went silent as the judge pressed play. My children's voices filled the air. "Sign it, or you'll regret it. Just give us control, Mom. She's too stubborn. Just make her sign." When the tape ended, the judge's face was stone. "Do you have anything to say for yourselves?" he asked them. David stuttered. Emily sobbed. Sarah tried to claim it was taken out of context, but the damage was done. The judge turned to me. "Mrs. Smith, not only is it clear you are competent, it is clear you are the victim of undue pressure from your own family. This case is dismissed. Furthermore, I advise you to consider restraining orders." I smiled for the first time that day. As I left the courtroom, I didn't look at my children. I didn't need to, because I knew I had just taken the final weapon out of their hands. But as strong as I felt, a small voice whispered inside me, "What next?" Because greed doesn't just vanish when it's exposed. And I had the sinking feeling this war wasn't over. Not yet.
The court hearing should have been the end of it. Any reasonable person would have walked away, ashamed, maybe even grateful that I hadn't pressed charges. But my children, reasonable was never in their vocabulary. By Christmas, the gloves were off. It started with Sarah. She showed up at my apartment one cold evening, mascara running, clutching her coat tight. "Mom, please," she begged, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry. We're all sorry. We don't want your money. We just want you." For 1 second, my heart softened. I almost believed her. But then she slipped. Maybe if you just loaned us a little, just until we get back on our feet." There it was, the truth, ugly and naked. I closed the door in her face. 2 days later, Emily tried a different angle. She called me, wailing about her kids. "Do you want your grandchildren to starve, Mom? Because that's what's happening. They'll be homeless. You can fix it with one phone call." And David? He didn't bother pretending. He sent me a message straight out of a mobster movie. "If you don't help us, don't be surprised if people start talking about what kind of mother abandons her family." They weren't just begging anymore. They were threatening. That was the final straw. So I set my last plan into motion. I called my lawyer. "It's time," I told him. "Draw up the transfers. Every cent. Every property. Everything." He hesitated. "You're sure?" "Absolutely. But here's the twist. They thought I was giving it to them. Instead, every asset, every investment, every slice of land went into a charitable foundation I created in my late husband's name. A foundation with strict bylaws that not a single one of my children could ever touch. I even arranged for scholarships and community programs in their hometowns, so they'd walk past plaques with my name on them for the rest of their lives, a daily reminder of what they could have had if they'd chosen love over greed. And to top it all off, I recorded one last message. On New Year's Eve, I invited them over. Not for reconciliation, not for family, but for closure. They walked in, suspicious, but curious. The table was empty except for 3 envelopes. "Sit," I said. They obeyed, perhaps sensing something final in my tone. I pushed the envelopes toward them. David tore his open first. His face went pale. What is this?" Inside was the legal paperwork, proof that the money, the houses, everything was gone, untouchable. Emily's hands shook as she read hers. "You gave it all away? To strangers?" Emily's voice cracked. "You ruined us." I leaned back, calm as ever. "No,
You ruined yourselves. I offered you love, and you wanted money. I gave you a family, and you wanted power. So I took away the only thing you truly cared about. For a moment, the room was silent except for their ragged breathing. Then David slammed his fist on the table. "You'll regret this, Mom." I met his glare with a smile colder than winter. "No, David, you will." And I walked out of my own apartment, leaving them sitting in the wreckage of their own greed. It's been months since that night. They don't call anymore. They don't visit. Word around town is they're drowning in debt, scraping by, clinging to the comfort they once took for granted. As for me, I moved into a small villa by the sea. It isn't extravagant, but it's peaceful. I spend my mornings gardening, my afternoons painting, and my evenings watching the sun melt into the horizon. And every time I pass by the community center funded by my foundation, filled with children laughing and learning, I feel something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Because revenge doesn't always mean screaming or fighting. Sometimes it's as quiet as a pen stroke. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply proving that you didn't need them and watching them realize they'll never have you again. So to anyone listening who's ever been betrayed by the people they loved most, don't waste your life chasing their approval. Don't beg them to see your worth. Build your own peace. Build your own legacy. And if they ever try to take it from you, smile. Because nothing terrifies the greedy more than a person they can't control.